Hey, so today I want to talk about socialization. And the definition that the book gives you for socialization is that it's the process whereby people come to understand societal norms and expectations. It is the way that we accept society's beliefs and to become aware of societal values. Essentially, it's how we sort of come to understand these statuses that we were given. Remember, we show up to a society that's already been here. And it was here before we got here. And as babies, we open our eyes into a new world. Somebody hits us in our face or on our boom boom, and all of a sudden we've got all these statuses that we're responsible for. Remember, some of those statuses are ascribed the day that we show up, what our gender is going to be specifically because of what our sex is, whether we are black or white racially, whether we are rich or poor economically, whether we are already a sibling, a big brother or a big sister. Those things become statuses that we carry. And for every one of those statuses, we've got a multitude of roles or expectations of how we're going to behave. We didn't sign up for it, but all of a sudden, we've got these expectations of us. And then we go on to achieve additional statuses that come with their own sets of expectations. And the big question becomes, how do we come to understand what those statuses are and what's expected of us? That's what socialization is. It's not socializing. We do learn these things through socializing, specifically in our interactions with people and institutions. But socialization is that process. Often in psychology, we might talk about things like personality development, how we become the kind of people who we are. And it's not very different in its focus, but we talk about it as this social process by which we come to understand these statuses and roles that we talked about before in this social structure. The things that help us do that, we refer to as agents of socialization. Your textbook makes a distinction between whether those agents of socialization are social agents or institutional agents. I point that out to you because your book makes the distinction, but I think it's a distinction without difference, really. They talk about the family and peers as social agents, and then things like education, religion, the economy, the government, media, those are institutional agents. But really, your family is an institution too, for instance. We'll get to that when we're talking social institutions. So it's a distinction, not really a difference that's worth considering. But to bring everything together where we're coming from before, we've already talked a little bit about, and we have the experience of your family teaches you right away what some of your gender roles are, for instance. You are dressed in pink or blue based on the sex you're assigned at birth. You are taught how to be a baby brother or a big brother or a big sister or a little sister. You automatically know these things. You don't choose your religion, you're ascribed your religion, and your church membership, for instance. And all of a sudden, what comes along with the values of that? What comes along with the cultural expectations of how you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to treat people in your family? Heck, who's even in your family? You get so much of that right away. We get that through our educational system when we go into our schools. We've talked before already about latent and manifest functions, but one of the ways that we talk about latent functions in education, it's by understanding this concept called hidden curriculum. Again, it's not necessarily the stuff that you'll find in your textbook. Sometimes it is very explicit. Things like sharing or taking turns or how to respect authority. Some of that stuff is very much infused through the educational system. What's important about the socialization that happens in those educational systems is that we understand what the values are in our society. And sometimes it's the first place where we meet friends who are not in our neighborhood or who are not people that we learn through our parents' friends, who may not even go to the same church for us with us, for instance, because they're not in our neighborhood. But it's the first time we might get some things or some teachings that are not the same as what we get in our family. It's an education where we learn teachers as another version of authority, some other adult that gets to tell us who we should be or how we should act. So we are socialized through our formal school experiences or through the education system in general, through our peers, through our teachers, through just the books themselves. We get a lot of understanding in that way. Um, when we are working, when we are part of the economy, we get new job titles, and that's sometimes very much setting related. But sometimes we carry that with us. If you are a medical doctor, you might say, when I'm not at work, these are things that are expected of me as a valued member of the community. If I am a police officer, I don't even have to be at work, but there's some expectations of my behavior that is becoming of me as a police officer or not becoming of me as a police officer. Like, so even that status in the economy carries with you in the ways that you understand yourself as a person. We're socialized through our participation as members of the economy, either as workers or as consumers. One of the things that we don't think about is the role that the government plays in helping us figure out who we're supposed to be. The fact that we make distinctions between minors and adult children, people who are adult, for instance. What does it mean when you turn 13? Or what does it mean about the age of consent when you turn 16, for instance? Or why is it so different when you turn 18 or when you turn 21? Well, the government is responsible for sort of organizing how we create the roles and responsibilities and in our society. And we create these rules about who's responsible for what. Why is your parent responsible for you until you're 16 or 18? Well, because that's what our laws say, right? Why is the government expecting you to be in school until you are a certain age? Because that's what our laws say, which means we are socialized sometimes based on our ages. What does it mean to be a senior? What does that get me? Sometimes it gets me perks. Sometimes it gets me the lack of a responsibility for certain things that other people have that I no longer have as a senior, or discounts in some way that's not just happening at the pancake restaurant, but through the government. There are things that I'm responsible for and things that I'm not. Like, things change based on our age. So this socialization process happens over time. It's not something that just happens when we're young or when we're adolescents. Again, sometimes we get that impression with some of these personality development theories that we may have in early psychology, but it doesn't stop when we grow up or when we become teenagers or when we have a general sense of ourselves. It's an ongoing thing that may have some milestones by age, but it's a lifetime situation. And one of those largest institutions where we learn about how we're supposed to be in society is through the media. Again, the media is the transmitter of our culture. It's the transmitter of information. We get some of what we want from our religion. They help us understand our values, and it's the basis of where we tend to fight that culture lag, where the world is changing in some ways, but we're trying to figure out how true to stay to our values and our belief systems. Well, some of what we learn about how we're supposed to be as siblings or friends or spouses, or again, as a police officer or a lawyer or a teacher, it's because of these images and these representations that we get through the media. So the media as an institution is also very critical in helping socialize members of society. So we've been talking a lot about this structure of society. Remember the social structure, statuses and roles, groups and organizations, and then we'll get to these social institutions. But all of these things, it's really hard to teach this thing in a linear fashion because as you can see, it's all relevant all at the same time. We are part of this social structure. We show up in a society where all of this stuff is already organized, and it helps us understand who we are, the place where we are in society, and what that means for what is expected of us. And all of these individual institutions are responsible or play this part in helping us understand where we are and what's expected of us. And we refer to that as the process of socialization. Functionalists clearly believe that it's necessary, and it's not a weird thing to say. It is necessary that we are socialized to understand the place that we fall in society. Conflict theorists are usually very careful about this process of socialization because when you use the hidden curriculum in an education system as an example, for instance, we learn to be in our place. Conflict theorists are very interested in issues of inequality in society, for instance. And it's very important if your education system or your parents or your peers or your church teaches you how to respect authority, maybe even how to cower in the face of authority versus how to properly challenge authority, or how to be innovative and think some other way. How to, instead of learning how to be just a worker, learning how to be a leader or an entrepreneur. those are sometimes parts of those hidden curriculum that we get through our education systems or that we might get from our parents based on their own socioeconomic status. Conflict theory says it's through the socialization process where we tend to learn how to maintain the status quo, how not to question the status quo, how not to rock the boat, really. So the socialization process is not only just how we learn society, but how we learn to keep our place and how we learn not to sort of rock the boat or push the boundaries. Symbolic interactionists, as you imagine, are always interested in the processes. What are we telling one another? What are peers helping each other understand? What are our textbooks telling us, for instance? What does the legal code do to sort of maintain status quo? So socialization as a whole process, again, is how we show up in society and learn what our place is, because those statuses belong to us, whether we've asked for them or not. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.